Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into our Chapter 14 overview to completely demystify cognitive behavioral family therapy. And we're not just going to talk about dry abstract theories today. We are going to dig into real family arguments, break down the actual science behind why we fight the way we do, and explore the exact cognitive frameworks that therapists use to help families finally break free from their most toxic cycles.
So, let's start with the problem I think we can all relate to. Have you ever wondered why family disputes over the simplest things, chores, curfew, who left the hallway light on again, always seem to feel like a broken record? It's like no matter how many times you swear you're going to handle the conflict differently this time, the second that trigger happens, everyone just falls right back into the exact same, predictable, wildly frustrating script. Why on earth does that happen?
Section 1. The Datilio Case Study. To really understand the mechanics of this kind of conflict, we're going to drop straight into a real-world therapy session with the Datilio family.
Let's anchor this in reality with a quote from a young man named Rob, who is clearly exasperated during a session. He says, "Ugh, I have one that mom does big time. If we're out past curfew, she freaks." I mean, it's a completely classic teenager-parent dynamic, right? But the therapist here, Frank Datilio, pushes the family to look deeper. He wants to know exactly why this specific trigger causes such an explosive reaction.
And that is when another family member, Susan, chimes in and just absolutely hits the nail on the head. She diagnoses the root of the problem, pointing out that uncommunicated expectations are what's actually driving these arguments. She realizes that everyone in the room is operating on their own internal assumptions, never actually sharing those assumptions out loud, and then getting incredibly angry when their silent expectations are inevitably broken.
What's really fascinating here is that therapists actually have an official label for this behavior. In cognitive behavioral family therapy, this is a cognitive distortion known as mind reading. It's exactly what it sounds like. You assume you know perfectly what your partner or your kid or your parent is thinking, without a single shred of actual evidence. You act on that assumption, they react to your totally unwarranted anger, and boom, you are right back in that familiar script of conflict.
Which brings us to Section 2, Foundations and Classical Conditioning. To stop this mind reading, we really need to look under the hood at the foundational psychology of how we learn these behaviors. And to do that, we're going back in time to the famous Soviet neurologist, Ivan Pavlov.
Okay, stick with me here, because I am absolutely about to compare your family dynamics to salivating dogs. Pavlov discovered classical conditioning while studying digestion in dogs, and he noticed something incredible. Physical responses could actually be artificially manufactured just by pairing a completely neutral stimulus with a meaningful one.
Walking through this step by step, it's crystal clear how it works. Step 1, Pavlov presents meat powder, an unconditioned stimulus, which naturally makes the dog salivate. Step 2, he pairs the meat powder with the ticking of a metronome. Give it enough time, and that metronome tone, all on its own, becomes a conditioned stimulus, automatically provoking the salivation. A completely neutral trigger has literally been trained to cause an involuntary physical response.
So bring this back to your living room. The crucial point here is that just like Pavlov's dogs, we human beings develop deeply ingrained automatic emotional reactions. In a family, a certain look, a slight shift in tone of voice, or a teenager walking through the door 10 minutes past curfew acts exactly like that ticking metronome. Before your brain has even had time to rationally process the event, your body and mind have already launched into a full-blown involuntary physical response.
Let's dive into Section 3, Catching Automatic Thoughts. This conditioning goes way beyond just our emotions. It actually hijacks our internal monologue, too.
Going back to the case studies, the therapist works with a father named John, who has this highly conditioned, totally irrational belief: the boss should never be questioned. John automatically takes this strict workplace rule and applies it directly to his family life. He rigidly enforces it as absolute truth, even though there is literally zero evidence that managing his kids like corporate employees actually works. It's an automatic thought that just fuels endless conflict because it completely eliminates any room for understanding or negotiation.
The sneaky thing about automatic thoughts is that they happen so incredibly fast, we usually have no idea they're even occurring. That's exactly why Datilio tells his clients they have to actively hunt them down. Pay really close attention to your mood. Whenever you feel that familiar, sudden spike of anger or frustration, you have to hit pause and ask yourself directly, wait, what am I actually thinking right now? He even tells clients to carry a simple notebook around to log these internal monologues throughout the week.
All right, Section 4, the cognitive change chart. Catching the thought is great, but we can't just leave it hanging there in the air. We need a practical way to restructure it into something productive.
This is where the cognitive behavioral change chart comes in, and it is a total game changer. It's a visual roadmap designed to literally pull those irrational, lightning-fast thoughts out of your brain, force them onto paper, and make your mind actively generate a logical alternative response. Let's map out a standard family argument using this exact flow. The situation: you walk in the door and the sink is overflowing with unwashed dishes. Your automatic, distorted thought is instantly, "He's thoughtless and doesn't care about me at all." The emotion that follows: intense anger and hurt. But by consciously interrupting that script, you force yourself to write out an alternative response. Okay, this is one incident. I should probably check what's going on with his day first. That right there is the absolute essence of cognitive restructuring. By forcing yourself to write out these alternative responses, you literally begin to rewire the classical conditioning that's been running your family's arguments for years. You are decoupling the metronome from the salivation. You're separating the unwashed dishes from the explosive anger.
Finally, Section 5, Managing Perpetual Conflict. Now that we've got the tools to rewire our scripts, we need to have a serious reality check about the true nature of long-term relationships.
Researchers like Dr. John Gottman, who have spent literal decades studying what makes relationships succeed or fail, discovered a truly shocking statistic. Get this, 69% of couple conflicts never get resolved. That is nearly 70% of the things you argue about that are just rooted in fundamental personality differences. They are completely perpetual.
This totally shifts the paradigm of what we're trying to do here. Choosing to build a family with someone essentially means choosing a very specific set of perpetual problems. The goal of cognitive behavioral family therapy isn't to magically create some conflict-free fairy tale, because that doesn't exist. The real goal is learning how to successfully manage those unresolvable differences with grace. It's about using these cognitive tools to stop everyday disagreements from turning into toxic, relationship-destroying scripts.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. Knowing that 69% of relationship problems are permanent and that conflict is just an inevitable part of loving other human beings, how are you going to use cognitive restructuring to change your own script today? The next time that metronome ticks, are you just going to react, or will you stop, catch the thought, and choose a better response?